After the final battle of the First Age, known as the War of Wrath, the Dark Lord Morgoth was defeated and cast out into the empty void beyond the spheres of the world, and many of the free people hoped and thought that this would be the last they see of him, though it was prophesied that in the distant future Morgoth would break free from his prison and return to Arda, and a great and final battle would take place called Dagor Dagorath. Hello friends, it's Carl here, and in today's episode we'll be discussing the Apocolypse of Arda, the last battle of Dagor Dagorath. Now we don't know how far into the future this battle would take place, though it appears that something would happen to the Valar and they would start to fail in some way, for according to the prophecy, Morgoth would only escape after the Valar had grown weary and were no longer enthroned. In that hour, he would notice that the guard that watched over him was asleep, and Morgoth would seize the opportunity to escape from the timeless void through the doors of night and return to Arda. He would use his power to destroy the sun and moon, enveloping the world in darkness, though one searing white light still shone in the sky, that of the Silmaril, which was carried by Eärendil aboard his flying ship, and he descended upon Morgoth and drove him out from the skies, forcing him to descend down to the fields of Valinor. It seems that some of Morgoth's greatest servants and followers would gather for this battle, including some that had been slain in the past, such as Ancalagon the Black, the greatest of the winged dragons, though we're never told how Morgoth managed to bring back this mighty beast to life. Now the forces of the Valar were led by Manwë, who would finally descend from the mountain peak of Taniquetil, and their army included the fallen hero of men called Turin, who was brought back from the dead in this dire hour. It was prophesied by Andret, the wise woman, that during this war, Turin would come across Ancalagon the Black and challenge him to battle, and he would emerge victorious after slaying this great dragon. The mighty fleet of Ar-Pharazôn, who was an ancient king of Númenor, was also finally freed from their imprisonment to fight in this battle, for they had been trapped in a prison beneath the earth until Dagor Dagorath, as punishment for daring to attack the Valar, though it's uncertain whether they formed part of Morgoth's forces or those of the Valar. Considering that it was Ilúvatar's intention to bury them in this prison, I think that he wanted to give them a chance to contemplate their actions and be humbled, and renounce their loyalty to Morgoth, and so I believe that it's more likely that during this battle they chose to fight alongside the forces of the Valar. However, this is just my own interpretation, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on it in the comments below. Now after Morgoth descended upon Valinor, Tulkas, who was one of the strongest of the Valar, approached him, with the chief of the Maiar called Eonwe on his right, and Turin Turambar on his left, and Tulkas would wrestle with Morgoth, though Morgoth would not be defeated by his hands, for it was Turin's fate to defeat him, and using his black sword Gurtang, he would put an end to Morgoth and his evil, and avenge the children of Hurin and the entire race of men that had suffered so much at Morgoth's hands. Some of Tolkien's other writings claim that it was actually Eonwe who would deal the killing blow to Morgoth, due to his love for Aryen, who was a Maiar spirit that guided the sun, which seems to suggest that Morgoth might have slain her after destroying the sun and moon. Even though Morgoth was finally defeated, the world of Arda lay broken and destroyed, and Morgoth's corruption was still present throughout the lands, and so it was time to erase it once and for all and remake the world of Arda. The three Silmarils were recovered from the sky, the depths of the earth, and the sea, and they were handed over to their creator, Fëanor, who broke them apart to recover the fire that lay within them. With this fire, Yavanna could rekindle the two trees of Valinor and fill the world with light once more, and the mountains of Valinor were leveled and destroyed, so that the light of the two trees could reach over to the lands of Middle-earth. It seems that Fëanor willingly chose to break apart the Silmarils, his most precious creations, and it's possible that this change of heart was due to the time that his spirit had to spend waiting in the halls of Mandos, for he was unable to be reincarnated until Dagor Dagorath, and perhaps this gave him the chance to contemplate on his sins and the acts of folly that had led him down a dark path. Now after Dagor Dagorath, the world of Arda would be remade, and the lands that lay beneath the sea, such as Beleriand and Numenor, would rise once more above the waves. The dwarves believe that after this battle, they would serve their creator Aule and help him to remake the world, and the Valar, Maiar, and Men would come together to sing the second music of the Ainur, which would be greater and more splendid than the first. I believe that this music would remake the world of Arda, and it would be the perfect world that the LOTR had intended, since Tolkien wrote that during the second music of the Ainur, all the themes of a LOTR shall be played correctly. It's also never revealed to us what part the elves might play after the world's end, or if they took part in the second music of the Ainur, and some people believe that they would end with the world of Arda, since their spirits were bound to it, though I disagree with this conclusion, for this world of Arda was still a part of Iluvatar's intention, even if it was harmed and corrupted by Morgoth, and if this new song was a perfected and greater version of the first, then it stands to reason that the elves would still have a place in this new perfected version of Arda. I also don't think that Iluvatar would disregard the elves who were his beloved children, and that he would still have a place and a plan for them in this new world. Now throughout his lifetime, Tolkien made various changes to this battle, and even to the origins of this prophecy. For example, in one of its earliest versions, Turin would transcend and be given a place among the sons of the Valar, though Tolkien clearly crossed this out, and he chose to erase it from the prophecy. This prophecy also originated as the second prophecy of Mandos, and it was actually the ending to many of the early manuscripts of the Quenta Silmarillion, though Christopher Tolkien chose to remove it from the final published edition. For according to these early manuscripts, the prophecy of Mandos was shared amongst the elves of Valinor, and this idea seems to have been discarded in some of Tolkien's later writings, such as Atrabet Finrod Achandreth, in which he wrote that the elves had no myths or legends concerning the end of Arda, and they knew nothing of its end, apart from that the world was ultimately finite. He also claims that the prophecy found at the end of the Silmarillion was clearly made by men, and it was Numenorian in origin. The whole concept of Dagor Dagorath and this apocalyptic end of the world is very often compared to Ragnarok from Norse mythology, and there are a few similarities, such as a hero called Sigurd that would return from the dead, which might have served as an inspiration behind Turin's fate, though I think that these two apocalyptic events actually differ significantly in the heart of their story, for Ragnarok represented the end of the world, the destruction of both the gods and the giants, and the start of a new cycle which didn't include these beings, while Dagor Dagorath represents a healing of the world and the eradication of evil, and because of this, I think the apocalypse of Christianity probably played a bigger part in the inspiration behind this story, rather than Ragnarok. Anyway friends, this wraps up today's video, and I hope you enjoyed it. I'd love to hear your thoughts on Dagor Dagorath. Do you consider it to be canon in Tolkien's Legendarium, and what do you think would happen to the elves? Would they still have a part to play in this new world, or would their story end after this battle? As always, I'd like to thank my patrons who have really helped to elevate this channel. It wouldn't be the same without you, and I would like to express how grateful I am for your support, especially our Wizard tier patrons, Mike Feeney, Roland Mervold, and Jacob Williams. If you too would like to help support this channel while unlocking some cool perks, I'll be leaving a link to my Patreon page in the video description below. I'll also be leaving links to our Instagram, Facebook, Discord, and Twitter communities, so follow us if you'd like to have some extra Lord of the Rings content in your day-to-day lives. As always, if you enjoyed this video, leave a like and subscribe to to join our fellowship today. I hope to see you all in my next video, where together we'll once again explore the magical world and lore of Middle-earth.